The dust from the trail had turned her tongue to leather, and her hope to ash when the ox collapsed mid-stride, its massive body hitting the desert earth with a sound that echoed across the Nevada wasteland like a death knell. Willa Preston stood frozen on the wagon seat, reins still clutched in her trembling hands, watching the animal's chest rise and fall one final time before it went still. The silence that followed was absolute, broken only by the hot wind whistling through the sagebrush. She was 3 days out from Verde, Nevada, heading east toward her brother's ranch in Utah territory. And now she was stranded in the middle of nowhere with a dead ox, a wagon full of everything she owned, and no way forward. The July sun beat down mercilessly, turning the afternoon into a furnace that seemed determined to bake every living thing to dust. She climbed down from the wagon, her legs shaking, and approached the fallen animal. Its eyes were glazed, tongue lolling from its mouth. Heat exhaustion, probably. She had pushed too hard, trying to cover ground before the worst of the summer set in. But she had miscalculated. The canteens were nearly empty, and she had been rationing water for herself, not fully realizing how much the ox needed in this brutal terrain. Guilt twisted in her stomach as she knelt beside the creature, placing a hand on its still warm hide. She was 23 years old, alone, and had just made a mistake that might cost her life. Willa stood and surveyed the landscape. Scrubland stretched in every direction, broken only by distant purple mountains that seemed to shimmer in the heat. The trail was barely visible, more suggestion than road, and she had not seen another soul since yesterday morning. Her water would last maybe another day if she was careful. The nearest town behind her was a 2-day walk, and she had no idea what lay ahead. She could try to salvage what she could carry and walk, but the thought of leaving behind her mother's china, her father's books, and the few precious belongings that connected her to the family she had lost made her throat tight. She was considering her options, each one bleaker than the last, when she heard the sound of hoofbeats and the jingle of harness. Willa spun around, shading her eyes against the sun, and saw a rider approaching from the west, leading 2 horses behind him. As he drew closer, she could make out details: a tall man in dusty clothes, a wide-brimmed hat pulled low against the sun, and a posture in the saddle that spoke of years spent riding. He reined in about 20 feet away, taking in the scene with a quick, assessing glance. The man was perhaps 26 or 27, with sun-darkened skin and eyes the color of storm clouds. A dark stubble covered his jaw, and when he pushed his hat back slightly, she saw brown hair curling at his collar. "Looks like you have had some trouble," he said, his voice rough but not unkind. Willa bristled at the obvious statement, but forced herself to be civil. She needed help, and pride would not get her to Utah. "My ox died. I am stranded." He dismounted with an easy grace and walked over to examine the animal, keeping a respectful distance from Willa. She noticed he moved like someone who was used to being careful around strangers, not threatening, just cautious. He crouched beside the ox, checked its eyes and mouth, then stood and shook his head. "Heat got him," he said. "You have been pushing hard." "I needed to reach my brother's ranch before August," Willa said, hearing the defensive edge in her voice. "He is expecting me." The man looked at her then, really looked, and she saw something shift in his expression. Not pity exactly, but a kind of understanding that made her chest ache. "Where are you headed?" "Outside Salt Lake City. My brother has a ranch there. I was supposed to arrive by the end of next month to help with the harvest." She paused, then added, "I have no other family. My parents died last winter of influenza." He was quiet for a moment, turning to look at the 2 horses he had brought with him. They were sturdy animals, clearly well cared for, with good strong legs and calm dispositions. Then he looked back at her wagon, calculating. "Those are my horses," he said finally. "I was bringing them to Verde to sell, but I think you need them more than I need the money right now." Willa stared at him. "I cannot afford to buy horses. I have maybe $20 to my name." "I am not asking you to buy them." He walked over to his saddle horse and began untying the lead rope. "I am giving them to you. They can pull your wagon the rest of the way." She felt her throat close up. "Why would you do that? You do not even know me." He turned to face her, and she saw something in his eyes that looked like old pain, carefully buried. "I know what it is like to be alone with nowhere to go. I know what it is like to need help and have nobody offer it." He held out the lead rope. "Take the horses. Get to your brother's place." "But what about you? How will you get where you are going?" A small smile touched his lips, softening the hard lines of his face. "I will walk. It is not far to Verdi. I can get another horse there." Willa felt tears prick her eyes and blinked them back furiously. She had not cried when her parents died, had not cried through the long, lonely months of settling their affairs and preparing for this journey, but this stranger's kindness threatened to undo her completely. She took the rope from his hand, careful not to let their fingers touch, and looked at the horses. They were beautiful animals, strong and healthy. "I do not know how to thank you," she said quietly. "No need for thanks, just get where you are going safely." He moved to help unhitch the dead ox from the wagon, working efficiently. "My name is Travis Malloy, by the way. Figure if I'm giving you my horses, you should at least know who I am." "Willa Preston." She moved to help him, and together they freed the wagon from its burden and began the work of hitching the two horses in tandem. Travis worked with the quiet competence of someone who had done this 1,000 times, his hands steady and sure. Willa found herself watching him, trying to understand what kind of man would give away his horses to a complete stranger. "Where were you headed?" she asked as they adjusted the harness. "Before you stopped to help me." "Verdi, like I said. I have been working cattle drives up north, saved enough to buy these two horses to sell. Figured I would make a little profit, maybe settle somewhere for a while." He shrugged. "Plans change." "I cannot take your horses if it means you have nothing," Willa protested, the reality of his sacrifice hitting her fully. "That is not right." Travis looked at her over the back of one of the horses, his gray eyes serious. "Miss Preston, if I leave you here, you will die. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but you will not make it to Utah alive on foot with limited water. I, on the other hand, am an experienced hand who knows this country. I can walk to Verdi in a day and a half, get work, and be fine. The math is pretty simple." She wanted to argue further, but she knew he was right. Still, the debt felt crushing. "Then let me pay you back somehow. Take what money I have, at least. Keep your money, you will need it." He finished adjusting the harness and stepped back to examine his work. "There, that should hold. These horses are used to working together, so they should pull steady for you." Willa bit her lip, thinking. Then an idea came to her, reckless and probably foolish, but it felt right. "Walk with me," she said suddenly. "To Utah. I can share my supplies, and when we get to my brother's ranch, he can pay you for the horses properly. He is a fair man, and he has means. You would get a better price from him than you would in Verdi anyway." Travis stared at her. "That is a long walk, Miss Preston. At least 3 weeks, maybe more. I know, but it seems wrong for you to give up everything and get nothing in return. This way, you get paid fairly, and I have someone who knows the trail." She met his eyes. "I am not expecting charity. This would be a business arrangement." He was quiet for a long moment, and she could see him thinking it through. Finally, he nodded slowly. "All right, I will walk with you, but I will earn my keep. I can hunt, scout ahead for water, help with the wagon. You are not just getting a walking companion, you are getting a hand." Relief flooded through her, mixed with something else she could not quite name. "Then, we have an agreement." They shook hands, his grip firm and warm, and Willa felt the first flutter of something that might have been hope. Or maybe it was just the beginning of something far more complicated. They set out within the hour, Travis having transferred his few belongings into the back of her wagon. He walked alongside the horses, one hand resting lightly on the harness, setting a steady pace that ate up the miles without exhausting the animals. Willa drove from the wagon seat, grateful to have the weight of decision-making partially lifted. Travis seemed to know instinctively when to rest the horses, where to find the best path through the scrubland, and how to conserve their water supplies. That first evening, they made camp near a small spring Travis had known about, a tiny oasis of green in the brown landscape. Willa watched as he efficiently built a fire, the flames catching quickly in the dry brush he gathered. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple that seemed too beautiful for the harsh land that produced them. "You know this country well," she observed, mixing flour and water for biscuits in a small pan. "Spent the last 8 years moving around out here," Travis said, feeding sticks into the fire. "Cattle drives, horse breaking, whatever work I could find. You learn the land when your life depends on it." "Where are you from originally?" Willa asked, then immediately wondered if she was being too forward. But Travis did not seem to mind the question. "Kansas. Little farm outside Abilene. My parents had a small place, tried to make a go of it. His voice was neutral, but she heard something underneath. Did not work out. I am sorry, he shrugged. Long time ago. I left when I was 18, headed west. Figured there had to be something better than watching my father drink himself to death and my mother work herself into the grave. He glanced at her. Sorry, that was probably more than you wanted to know. No, Willa said quickly. I asked, and I understand, in a way. My parents were good people, but life was hard. My father was a merchant in San Francisco, but he never quite recovered after the financial panic in '69. We lost almost everything. When they died, I had nothing left to stay for. My brother had already come out here to try ranching, said there was opportunity in Utah territory. So I sold what little we had and bought the wagon and supplies. And one ox, Travis added with a slight smile. And one ox, Willa agreed, returning the smile despite herself. That turned out to be a poor decision. In this heat, even 2 oxen would have struggled. You were just unlucky with the timing. He accepted the tin plate she handed him with the biscuits and some dried beef from her stores. Thank you for this. They ate in companionable silence as the stars began to emerge overhead, bright and countless in the clear desert sky. Willa found herself stealing glances at Travis when she thought he was not looking, trying to puzzle him out. He was quieter than any man she had known, but it was not an uncomfortable quiet. He seemed content to let silence be, not feeling the need to fill every moment with words. Can I ask you something? She said finally, setting her empty plate aside. Sure. Why did you really stop to help me? And please do not say it was just kindness. Men do not give away their entire livelihood for strangers without a reason. Travis was quiet for so long, she thought he might not answer. He stared into the fire, his face shadowed and thoughtful. 3 years ago, he said finally, I found a woman on the trail. She had been traveling alone, and her wagon had broken an axle. I was in a hurry to get to a cattle drive I had signed on for, good money, and I did not want to be late. So I gave her some water, pointed her toward the nearest town, and rode on. Willa waited, sensing there was more. I heard later that she never made it to that town. Someone found her body a week after I saw her. She had tried to walk, carrying what she could, but the heat got her. He looked up at Willa then, and she saw the guilt in his eyes. I could have helped her. I could have been a few days late to that drive, helped her fix her wagon, or taken her to town myself. But I did not want the inconvenience. I wanted my money and my job. Travis, that was not your fault, Willa said softly. You did not know what would happen. Maybe not, but I knew she was in trouble, and I chose not to help beyond the bare minimum. I have thought about that woman every day since, wondered who she was, if she had family waiting for her, if she was scared when she realized she was not going to make it. He picked up a stick and poked at the fire. When I saw you today with that dead ox, I saw her, and I knew I could not make the same choice twice. Willa felt her heart squeeze. She rose from her seat by the fire and moved to sit closer to him, though still at a respectable distance. You are a good man, Travis Malloy. Whatever mistakes you think you made, you are trying to make them right. That matters. He looked at her, and in the firelight, his eyes seemed less gray and more silver, reflecting the flames. I hope your brother appreciates what he is getting. You are braver than most people I have met, heading out here alone. I did not feel very brave when that ox died, Willa admitted. I felt terrified and foolish. Brave people get scared too. They just keep going anyway. They talked late into the night, the conversation flowing more easily than Willa would have thought possible with someone she had just met. She told him about growing up in San Francisco, about her mother's love of books and her father's terrible jokes. He told her about learning to break horses as a boy, about the time he had been thrown into a water trough by a particularly ornery mare. She laughed at his stories, and he smiled at hers, and somewhere in those hours, Willa realized that the loneliness she had been carrying for months had lifted slightly. When they finally retired for the night, Travis laying out his bedroll under the wagon and Willa climbing into the wagon bed itself, she lay awake for a long time, listening to the night sounds of the desert and thinking about the strange turn her life had taken. Yesterday she had been alone and hopeless. Tonight she had a traveling companion who had sacrificed everything to help her. It felt like something out of a storybook, the kind her mother used to read to her as a child. But this was real, and Travis was real, and the feeling growing in her chest every time she looked at him was definitely real. That thought should have scared her, but instead, it felt like the first good thing to happen in a very long time. The next days fell into a rhythm. They would rise with the sun, Travis heating water for coffee while Willa prepared a simple breakfast. They would pack up camp with practiced efficiency, each learning the other's methods and adapting. Then they would set out, Travis walking beside the horses while Willa drove, and they would talk or fall into easy silence as the mood struck them. Travis proved to be as good as his word about earning his keep. He shot a pronghorn on the third day, and they feasted on fresh meat that night, a welcome change from dried beef and biscuits. He found springs and streams she would never have noticed, ensuring the horses always had water. And when one of the wagon wheels began to wobble on the fifth day, he diagnosed the problem immediately and spent an evening repairing it, his hands steady and skilled. For her part, Willa proved to be more resourceful than even she had known. She managed their supplies carefully, stretching what she had to ensure they would not run short. She learned to build fires that burned hot and clean, to read the horses' moods and needs, and to navigate by the stars when Travis taught her. She had always thought of herself as a city girl, playing at frontier life, but out here with Travis, she discovered she was stronger than she had believed. But more than the practical partnership they were building, there was something else growing between them. Willa caught herself watching Travis more and more often, the way his shoulders moved when he worked, the rare but beautiful smile that transformed his serious face, the gentle way he spoke to the horses. She found herself looking forward to their evening conversations, to the sound of his voice in the darkness, to the stories he told about his wandering years. And she thought, though she could not be certain, that he watched her too. She would look up from mending a harness strap and find his eyes on her, thoughtful and intent. He began to anticipate her needs, handing her things before she asked, adjusting the pace to suit her comfort, checking on her welfare with increasing frequency. Small touches became more common, a hand offered to help her down from the wagon, fingers brushing as they passed objects between them, his shoulder against hers as they sat by the fire. On the 8th night, they camped in a small canyon that offered protection from the wind. A storm was building to the west, dark clouds piling up against the mountains, and Travis wanted them to have shelter if it hit. They built their fire in the lee of a large rock, and Willa cooked a stew with some of the pronghorn meat and wild onions Travis had found. "This is good," he said, accepting a second helping. "You are a good cook." "My mother taught me," Willa said. "She said a woman should be able to make something delicious out of almost nothing. It was a point of pride for her. She sounds like she was a strong woman." "She was. I wish you could have met her. I think she would have liked you." Willa paused, surprised at her own words. It felt like a significant admission, somehow, to imagine Travis meeting her family. He looked at her across the fire, and the intensity in his gaze made her breath catch. "I wish I could have met her too." Thunder rumbled in the distance and the wind picked up, sending sparks spiraling up from the fire. Travis glanced at the sky, frowning. "That storm is moving faster than I thought. We should secure everything." They worked quickly, tying down the wagon cover and moving their supplies under the shelter of the rock overhang. The first drops of rain began to fall just as they finished, fat and heavy, and within minutes it was a downpour. Travis led the horses to a spot where the overhang would protect them, then returned to where Willa huddled by the fire. "This is going to be a big one," he said, raising his voice to be heard over the rain. "The fire will not last much longer in this wind." He was right. Within minutes, the fire was reduced to smoking embers, despite their best efforts to shield it. The temperature dropped rapidly, and Willa shivered in her damp clothes. Travis noticed immediately. "Get in the wagon," he said. "Get out of those wet things and wrap up in blankets. You will catch your death out here." "What about you?" Willa asked, her teeth starting to chatter. "I will be fine under the wagon with my bedroll." But when Willa climbed into the wagon and began to change behind the privacy of the canvas cover, she realized how cold it truly was. The rain was coming down in sheets now, and water was seeping through small holes in the old canvas. She wrapped herself in blankets, but could not stop shaking. She thought about Travis under the wagon, getting soaked, and made a decision. "Travis!" she called out, her voice barely audible over the storm. His face appeared at the back of the wagon. "Are you all right?" "Get in here," she said. "There is room for both of us, and you are going to freeze to death out there." "Miss Preston, I cannot—" It is Willa, and yes, you can. This is practical, not improper. We will both freeze if we stay separate, and that would be stupid. She pulled a blanket aside. Please, you have done so much for me. Let me do this. He hesitated for a long moment, then climbed into the wagon, bringing his damp bedroll with him. The space was cramped with both of them and all of Willa's belongings, but they managed to arrange themselves sitting up, wrapped in separate blankets with their backs against trunks and crates. Thank you, Travis said quietly. You are right. It is cold out there. They sat in silence for a while, listening to the rain pound against the canvas. Gradually, Willa's shivering subsided, the shared body heat in the enclosed space warming them both. She was intensely aware of Travis's presence, so close she could hear his breathing, could smell the scent of leather and wood smoke that clung to him. Can I ask you something personal? Travis said after a while. I think we are past standing on ceremony, Willa said with a slight laugh. Why were you traveling alone? Your brother could not come for you? Willa pulled her blanket tighter. He offered, but I told him not to. It was planting season, and he had just taken on more land. He needed to be there, and I suppose I wanted to prove I could do this myself. After my parents died, everyone treated me like I was fragile, like I might break. I wanted to show myself that I was capable of handling hard things. You have proved that, Travis said softly. You are one of the strongest people I have met. Willa felt warmth spread through her chest that had nothing to do with the blankets. I do not feel strong most of the time. I feel like I am making it up as I go. That is what strength is, doing what needs to be done even when you are scared and uncertain. He shifted slightly and his shoulder brushed hers. Neither of them moved away. You inspire me, Willa. She turned to look at him, though in the darkness of the wagon, she could barely make out his features. How could I possibly inspire you? You keep going. You lost everything, and you are still moving forward, still hopeful. I have spent the last 3 years just drifting, too afraid of failing to commit to anything. But watching you these past days, seeing how you face challenges head on, it makes me want to be better, to try for something more than just surviving. Willa felt tears prick her eyes. Travis, you are already better than you think. You stopped to help a stranger when you did not have to. You gave up everything you had worked for. That is not the action of someone who is just drifting. Maybe you were right. Maybe meeting you changed something. His voice was rough with emotion. Willa, I need to tell you something. Her heart began to pound. What? I know we have not known each other long, just over a week, but I feel like I have known you much longer, like you are someone I have been looking for without knowing I was looking. He paused, and she heard him take a shaky breath. I am not good with words, and I do not have anything to offer you, no home, no prospects, just a promise to work hard and be honest. But I think I am falling in love with you, and I needed you to know that, even if it is too soon or inappropriate or Travis. Willa reached out in the darkness and found his hand, lacing her fingers through his. I am falling in love with you too. The silence that followed was profound, weighted with possibility. Then Travis moved, and suddenly his other hand was cupping her face, his thumb brushing her cheek. May I kiss you? Yes, Willa breathed. His lips found hers in the darkness, gentle at first, questioning. Willa answered by pressing closer, her free hand finding his shoulder. The kiss deepened, becoming something urgent and beautiful, all the feelings they had been carefully dancing around for days finally given expression. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Willa felt like the world had shifted on its axis. I have wanted to do that for days, Travis admitted, his forehead resting against hers. I wish you had done it sooner, Willa said, and felt him smile. They rearranged themselves so they could lie down. Willa nestled against Travis's chest with his arms around her, blankets pulled over them both. It was improper and scandalous, and probably foolish, but Willa had never felt safer or more certain of anything in her life. Outside, the storm raged on, but inside their small shelter, everything was warm and right. What happens when we reach your brother's ranch? Travis asked quietly, his lips against her hair. You get paid for the horses, Willa said. And then, if you want, you stay. My brother always needs good hands, and you are the best hand I have ever seen. We can court properly, the way we should. And maybe, if things work out the way I hope they will, we can build something together. I would like that, Travis said. I would like that very much. They fell asleep wrapped around each other while the storm spent its fury against the desert night, and Willa dreamed of a future that suddenly seemed bright with promise. The storm had passed by morning, leaving the air clean and cool. They emerged from the wagon to find the desert transformed, tiny green shoots already beginning to push up from the damp earth. A reminder that life persisted even in the harshest places. Travis built up the fire while Willa heated water for coffee, and they moved around each other with a new ease, touching frequently a hand on the small of her back, fingers trailing along his arm, small, intimate gestures that spoke of the shift in their relationship. Over breakfast, they talked about practical matters. They were making good time despite Travis being on foot, and he estimated they would reach the Utah Territory border in another week if the weather held. From there, it would be perhaps another week to Willa's brother's ranch. 2 weeks to build this fragile new thing between them into something that could last. As they traveled that day, Willa found herself filled with a giddy happiness she had not felt since before her parents died. Travis walked beside the wagon, and they talked about everything and nothing, childhood memories, dreams for the future, silly jokes that made them both laugh. He told her about the places he had seen in his wandering years, and she told him about the books she loved to read. They discovered shared interests and differing opinions, and every conversation felt like another thread weaving them together. That night, when they made camp, Travis kissed her again under the stars, slow and sweet, and Willa thought her heart might burst from the joy of it. They sat by the fire afterward, her head on his shoulder, his arm around her waist, and watched the flames dance. "Tell me about your brother," Travis said. "What is he like?" "Jacob is practical and serious, but he has a good heart," Willa said. "He is 5 years older than me, and he always looked out for me growing up. When our parents were struggling, he was the one who decided to head west and make a new start. He has been working his ranch for 3 years now, built it up from nothing. He is proud, but he is fair. I think you will get along with him." "Does he know you are coming alone?" "I sent him a letter before I left San Francisco, but I do not know if he received it. Mail out here can be unpredictable. He might be expecting me, or he might not, but he will be glad to see me either way. We are all the family each other has left." Travis nodded thoughtfully. "And he will not mind you showing up with a cowboy you met on the trail?" Willa laughed. "He will probably be shocked, but he will come around once he meets you. Jacob values hard work and honesty, and you have both in abundance. I hope you are right. I would hate to make a bad first impression on the man whose sister I intend to court." The casual statement of his intentions sent a thrill through Willa. "You intend to court me, do you?" "If you will have me, yes, properly with your brother's knowledge and blessing, the way it should be done." He turned to look at her, his expression serious. "I know I do not have much to offer right now, Willa, but I am a hard worker, and I will do everything I can to build a life worthy of you." "Travis, you saved my life," Willa said, cupping his face in her hands. "You gave up everything you had for a stranger. You have walked beside my wagon for over a week without complaint. You have more to offer than you know." He kissed her then, deep and passionate, and Willa lost herself in the feeling of his lips on hers, his hands in her hair. When they finally broke apart, both flushed and breathing hard, Travis rested his forehead against hers. "I love you," he said quietly. "I know it is fast, and maybe I am a fool for saying it so soon, but I love you, Willa Preston." "I love you too," Willa whispered back. "I think I started falling for you the moment you handed me those horses." They held each other as the fire burned down to embers, neither wanting to let go, both marveling at the strange and wonderful turn their lives had taken. Eventually, they separated for sleep. Travis under the wagon and Willa inside it, but the knowledge of their feelings lay between them like a warm blanket, comforting and real. The days that followed were some of the happiest of Willa's life. Despite the harsh conditions, the long miles, and the uncertainty of what lay ahead, she felt more alive than she had in years. Travis made everything better: his presence, his humor, his quiet strength. He taught her to shoot his rifle, laughing when she missed the target but praising her warmly when she finally hit it. She taught him a card game her mother had loved, and they played by firelight, betting pebbles and wildflowers. They crossed into Utah Territory on a bright afternoon, marked by nothing more than a weathered signpost, but it felt momentous. They were getting closer to their destination, closer to the moment when they would have to translate this trail romance into real life. It was both exciting and terrifying. "Nervous?" Travis asked, reading her expression as they made camp that evening. "A little," Willa admitted. "Everything has felt like a dream out here, just the two of us against the world. I am worried about what happens when reality sets in." Travis took her hands in his gray eyes serious. "Reality does not change how I feel about you. You could introduce me to 100 brothers, and I would still want to be with you, still want to build a life with you." "Promise me something," Willa said suddenly. "Promise me that no matter what happens, we will be honest with each other. No secrets, no pretending." "I promise," Travis said solemnly. "Honesty, always, even when it is hard." They sealed the promise with a kiss, and Willa felt some of her anxiety ease. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. 2 days later, they encountered other travelers for the first time since Travis had found Willa, a family heading in the opposite direction, back toward Nevada. The husband was driving a wagon much like Willa's, his wife beside him, and 3 children peeking out from under the canvas cover. They stopped to exchange news, and Willa felt Travis tense beside her, as the other man's eyes moved between them, clearly trying to determine their relationship. "You folks heading to Salt Lake?" the man asked, friendly enough but curious. "To a ranch east of there," Willa said carefully. "My brother's place. Mr. Malloy here is traveling with me as security." It was not exactly a lie, but it was not the full truth either. The man nodded, accepting the explanation, and they talked for a few minutes about trail conditions and water sources before parting ways. After the family had continued on, Travis let out a breath. "That was awkward," he said. "I am sorry. I did not know what else to say. If I had said you were my fiancé, it would not have been true, but if I had said you were my friend, it would not have been enough." Willa felt frustrated by the social conventions that made their situation so complicated. "It is all right," Travis said, touching her cheek gently. "We will figure it out. Once we reach your brother's place, everything will be more straightforward." But Willa worried about it as they continued on. What would Jacob think when she showed up with a cowboy she had known for less than 3 weeks? Would he believe they were truly in love, or would he think Travis was taking advantage of her? Would he give his blessing for them to court, or would he forbid it? The questions chased themselves around her head until Travis noticed her distraction. "Talk to me," he said that evening as they ate dinner. "Tell me what you are thinking." Willa set down her plate and looked at him. "I am thinking that I do not want to lose you, and I am scared that when we reach the ranch, something will happen to pull us apart." Travis moved to sit beside her, pulling her against his side. "Nothing is going to pull us apart unless we let it. I am not some wandering cowboy anymore, Willa. I am a man in love who wants to settle down and build something lasting. Whatever your brother thinks, whatever obstacles we face, I am not going anywhere. You promise?" "I promise. You are stuck with me now." He kissed the top of her head. "Besides, I have walked halfway across Nevada and Utah with you. I am not about to give up right before the finish line." Willa laughed despite her worries, and they spent the rest of the evening talking about happier things, what their future might look like, what kind of home they might build, whether they wanted children someday. It was all speculation, dreams spun out of hope and new love, but it made the future feel real and possible. 3 days from the ranch, they encountered trouble. They had been making good time, the horses pulling steadily, when one of them suddenly went lame. Travis noticed it immediately, the slight hitch in the animal's gait, and called a halt. He examined the horse carefully, running his hands down its legs, and his face was grim when he looked up at Willa. "It's a stone bruise, I think," he said. "We need to rest her for a few days or risk permanent damage." Willa felt panic flutter in her chest. "We are so close. Can we not just go slow? Not without potentially ruining her. And these are good horses, Willa. They have gotten us this far. We owe them proper care." He straightened up, thinking. "There is a small settlement about a day's walk from here, place called Cedar Springs. We can take the horses there, let the lame one rest, and continue on when she is healed." It was the sensible thing to do, and Willa knew it, but the delay frustrated her. They were so close to the ranch, so close to being able to move forward with their lives. But Travis was right. They could not mistreat the animals that had carried them so far. They made their way slowly to Cedar Springs, arriving the next afternoon. It was barely a town, just a handful of buildings clustered around a good water source, but it had a livery stable and a small general store. The liveryman, a grizzled older fellow named Sykes, examined the lame horse and confirmed Travis's diagnosis. "Need to rest her for at least 3 days, maybe 4, Sykes said. "You can stable both horses here if you like. I will take good care of them." They arranged the details, and Travis paid the fee from his meager funds despite Willa's protests that she should pay. Then they found themselves with an unexpected pause in their journey, stuck in a tiny settlement with nothing to do but wait. "Well," Travis said, looking around at the dusty street, "at least the scenery is memorable." Willa laughed. "It is terrible, but at least we are together." They found a room at the only boarding house in town, and Willa was grateful that the proprietor, an older woman named Mrs. Chen, did not ask awkward questions about their relationship. She simply showed them to separate rooms and provided them with clean linens and information about meal times. That evening, Willa and Travis walked to the edge of town, where the buildings gave way to grassland. They sat on a fallen log and watched the sun set, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink. "Are you disappointed about the delay?" Travis asked, holding her hand. "A little," Willa admitted. "But maybe it is a blessing in disguise. It gives us a few more days together before everything gets complicated." "It is going to work out," Travis said firmly. "I know you are worried, but I have a good feeling about this. Your brother is going to give us his blessing, and we are going to build a good life. I am certain of it." Willa leaned against his shoulder, drawing comfort from his certainty. "When did you become such an optimist?" "When I met you. You make me believe good things are possible." They sat together as the stars began to emerge, talking quietly about their hopes and dreams. Travis spoke about his desire to have his own small ranch someday, nothing fancy, just enough land to raise horses and maybe some cattle. Willa talked about wanting a home filled with books and laughter, a place where she could put down roots after years of uncertainty. "We can have all of that," Travis said. "It might take time, and we will have to work hard, but we can build it together." "Together," Willa echoed, liking the sound of that word. The next 3 days passed in a pleasant haze. They were still traveling, not yet at their destination, but the forced rest felt like a gift. They explored the area around Cedar Springs, Travis pointing out native plants and animal tracks. They helped Mrs. Chen in her garden in exchange for meals, working side by side in the dirt. They talked for hours, learning more about each other with every conversation, and they grew closer, both emotionally and physically. They were careful to maintain propriety in public, but in private moments walking in the fields, sitting by the creek, they kissed and held each other, expressing their love in ways that felt both innocent and profound. Travis was always respectful, never pushing for more than Willa was comfortable with, but the desire between them was undeniable. "I want to marry you," Travis said one evening as they sat by the creek, Willa's head in his lap while he played with her hair. "Properly, with a ceremony and everything. I want you to be my wife." Willa looked up at him, seeing the sincerity in his eyes. "I want that too, more than anything. Then, as soon as we reach your brother's ranch, as soon as he gives his blessing, I am going to ask you formally. Get down on one knee and do it right." He smiled. "I do not have a ring, but I will get you one. The nicest one I can afford." "I do not need a fancy ring," Willa said, sitting up to face him. "I just need you." "You have me," Travis said, pulling her close. "For as long as you want me, you have me." They kissed as the sun set, and Willa felt a certainty settle into her bones. This was right. Travis was right. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. And they would win, because their love was strong enough to overcome anything. On the 4th day, Sykes declared the horse fit to travel, and they prepared to depart Cedar Springs. Mrs. Chen packed them food for the journey and gave Willa a knowing smile that suggested she understood exactly what was developing between the young woman and her traveling companion. "You take care of each other," Mrs. Chen said as they said their goodbyes. "Love like yours does not come along often. Hold on to it." "We will," Willa promised. They set out with renewed energy, knowing they were finally in the last stretch of their journey. The landscape was greener here, irrigated by mountain streams, and they passed several ranches and farms. Civilization was returning, and with it, the reality of the life they were about to step into. "According to the directions my brother sent, his ranch should be about a day from Cedar Springs," Willa said, consulting the worn letter she had been carrying. "We should reach it by tomorrow afternoon." Travis nodded, and she saw both excitement and nervousness in his expression. How do you want to handle this? Should I stay back when we first arrive? Give you time to talk to your brother alone? Willa considered this. No, I want you with me. I am not going to hide what you mean to me, or pretend this is something it is not. We arrive together, and we tell Jacob the truth together. All right, Travis said, squeezing her hand. Together. They made camp that final night with a mixture of anticipation and trepidation. Everything was about to change, and though Willa believed it would change for the better, there was no denying the uncertainty. Travis built the fire in silence, his movements economical and efficient, and Willa recognized that he was as nervous as she was. Come here, she said after they had eaten, patting the ground beside her. Travis came and sat, and Willa immediately wrapped her arms around him, holding tight. No matter what happens tomorrow, no matter what my brother says or does, I love you. That is not going to change. I love you too, Travis said, his voice rough with emotion. You are the best thing that has ever happened to me, Willa. You saved me just as much as I saved you. They held each other as the fire burned low, drawing strength from their connection. Eventually, they prepared for sleep, but before Travis could move to his usual spot under the wagon, Willa stopped him. Stay with me tonight, she said. In the wagon. I do not want to be apart from you. Travis hesitated. Willa, we should be careful. I do not want to compromise your reputation. My reputation will be fine. We are about to tell my brother we want to marry. One night of sleeping beside each other, fully clothed and respectful, is not going to ruin anything. She held out her hand. Please, I need you close tonight. He took her hand and climbed into the wagon, and they arranged themselves among the crates and trunks, wrapped in blankets. Travis held her close, her back to his chest, his arms around her waist. It felt safe and right, and Willa fell asleep listening to his steady breathing, feeling more at peace than she had in months. They woke to a beautiful morning, clear and cool, perfect traveling weather. They went through their morning routine with extra care, Willa brushing out her hair and changing into her best dress, Travis shaving and putting on his cleanest shirt. They were both quiet, focused on the enormity of what lay ahead. The ranch came into view just after midday. It was larger than Willa had expected, a sprawling operation with a main house, several outbuildings, and extensive corrals filled with horses and cattle. She felt a swell of pride for her brother, who had built all of this in just 3 years through hard work and determination. They approached slowly, and before they reached the main house, a man emerged from one of the barns. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with the same dark hair as Willa, and when he caught sight of the wagon, his face broke into a huge smile. Willa! Jacob Preston strode toward them, his long legs eating up the distance. I got your letter. I have been watching for you for days. Willa climbed down from the wagon and was immediately swept up in her brother's embrace. He was solid and real, and she felt tears prick her eyes at the relief of finally being here, of finally being safe. I made it, she said, her voice muffled against his shoulder. I actually made it. Of course you did. You are tougher than you look, little sister. Jacob pulled back to look at her, his hands on her shoulders, and his smile was so warm and genuine that Willa felt her anxiety ease slightly. Then his eyes moved past her to where Travis stood beside the wagon, waiting patiently, and his expression became questioning. And who is this? Jacob, this is Travis Malloy, Willa said, turning to gesture Travis forward. He saved my life on the trail, and he is the reason I am here. Travis stepped forward and extended his hand. Mr. Preston, it is an honor to meet you. Jacob shook his hand, his grip firm, his eyes assessing. Call me Jacob. Any man who helped my sister is welcome here. What happened? They told him the story there in the yard, people beginning to gather ranch hands curious about the visitors. A woman Willa assumed was the cook, a few children who belonged to some of the workers. Willa explained about the ox dying, about Travis giving her his horses, about him walking beside her wagon for weeks to ensure she made it safely. And these are your horses? Jacob asked Travis, gesturing to the 2 animals hitched to the wagon. They were, Travis said. I gave them to your sister because she needed them more than I did, but the agreement was that I would walk with her here, and you would pay me a fair price for them. They are good horses, well-trained and strong. Jacob walked over to examine the animals, running expert hands over their legs and checking their teeth. After a thorough inspection, he nodded. These are excellent horses, worth at least $100 for the pair, maybe more. I will give you 125, and that is a fair deal. Travis looked startled. That is more than generous. You saved my sister's life and gave up your livelihood to ensure she got here safely. The least I can do is pay you well for these animals. Jacob turned to Willa, his expression softening. I am glad you are here, Willa, and I am grateful to Mr. Malloy for his help. Jacob, there is something else we need to tell you, Willa said, her heart pounding. She reached for Travis's hand, lacing her fingers through his. Travis and I, we have fallen in love. We want to court properly, with your blessing, and eventually, we want to marry. The silence that followed felt eternal. Jacob looked at their joined hands, then at their faces, his expression unreadable. The watching ranch hands exchanged glances, and Willa felt her cheeks heat, but she did not let go of Travis's hand. She had meant what she said they would face this together, no matter what. Finally, Jacob spoke. You have known each other for what, 2 weeks? 19 days, Travis said. I know it is fast, and I know I am not much to look at, just a cowboy with no prospects. But I love your sister, Jacob. I love her with everything I am, and I will work every day for the rest of my life to be worthy of her. I am not asking for anything except the chance to prove myself to you and to her. Jacob was quiet for a long moment, his eyes moving between them. Then, unexpectedly, he smiled. You know, when I got Willa's letter saying she was coming alone, I was worried sick. I could not leave the ranch during planting season, but I hated the thought of her making that journey by herself. And then she shows up safe and sound with a man who clearly adores her, a man who gave up everything to help a stranger. He stepped forward and clapped Travis on the shoulder. You have my blessing to court my sister, Mr. Malloy. And if things work out the way I think they will, you will have my blessing to marry her too. Willa felt like she might cry from relief. Thank you, Jacob. Thank you so much. Do not thank me. Just be happy. Jacob looked at Travis. You can work here if you want. I always need good hands, and I am guessing you are a good hand based on the condition of those horses. The pay is decent, and there is a cabin you can use. It is small, but it is clean. I would be honored, Travis said, his voice thick with emotion. Thank you. Jacob, I promise you will not regret this. I know I will not. Now, come on, let us get you both settled in. You must be exhausted from the journey. Jacob gestured toward the main house. Willa, you will stay in the house with me. Travis, I will show you to the cabin, and tonight we will have a proper dinner to celebrate your arrival. The next hours passed in a whirlwind of activity. Jacob showed Willa to her room in the house, a lovely space with a real bed and curtains on the windows. She unpacked her belongings, hanging her few dresses in the wardrobe and arranging her mother's china on a shelf. From the window, she could see Travis being shown around the ranch by Jacob, the two men talking easily, and her heart swelled with gratitude and love. That evening, they gathered for dinner in the main house. The cook, a cheerful woman named Maria, had prepared a feast roast beef, potatoes, fresh bread, vegetables from the garden, and a pie for dessert. Jacob sat at the head of the table, Willa on his right and Travis on his left, and they talked and laughed like old friends. Tell me about the ranch, Willa said. I want to know everything. How did you build all of this? Jacob launched into the story, explaining how he had started with just a small piece of land and a handful of cattle, how he had slowly expanded through careful management and hard work. He employed 6 full-time hands, plus seasonal workers during busy times. He raised both cattle and horses, selling beef to the army and horses to settlers. It was a good operation, profitable and growing. And I could not have done it without help, Jacob said, nodding to Maria. Maria keeps us all fed and sane. Her husband, Carlos, is my foreman. Best hand I have ever had. Jacob is too kind, Maria said, but she looked pleased. We are just doing our jobs. As the evening wore on, Willa felt herself relaxing fully for the first time in months. She was safe, surrounded by people who cared about her, and the man she loved had been accepted into her new life. Travis sat across from her, his eyes meeting hers frequently, small smiles passing between them that spoke of shared joy and relief. After dinner, Travis walked Willa out to the porch where they could have a moment of relative privacy. The sun was setting, casting golden light across the ranch, and everything felt touched with magic. We did it, Travis said, pulling her into his arms. We actually did it. I was so scared Jacob would say no, Willa admitted, resting her head on his chest. I would have courted you anyway, even without his blessing, Travis said. But I am glad we have it. I like your brother. He is a good man. He is, and he likes you too. I could tell. Willa pulled back to look up at him. So what now? We court for a respectable amount of time, and then what? Then I ask you to marry me, properly, and you say yes, and we have a wedding and spend the rest of our lives being disgustingly happy together. Travis grinned. That is the plan anyway. I like that plan, Willa said, stretching up to kiss him. I like it very much. They stood on the porch as the stars came out, holding each other and marveling at how far they had come. From that moment on the trail, when Travis had stopped to help a stranded stranger, their lives had changed completely. And now, standing on the threshold of a new life, everything felt possible. The weeks that followed established a new rhythm. Travis threw himself into work on the ranch, proving himself to be exactly what he had claimed, a skilled, hard-working hand who could handle anything thrown at him. He worked with the horses, mended fences, helped with the cattle, and earned the respect of the other hands quickly. Jacob was impressed, and he told Willa so frequently. That man of yours is one of the best workers I have ever had, Jacob said one evening after Travis had stayed late, helping repair a barn door. You chose well, sister. Willa and Travis courted properly, the way respectable people did. He would call on her in the evenings after work, cleaned up and presentable, and they would sit on the porch or walk around the ranch. They talked about everything, learning more about each other with every conversation. He told her about his dreams for the future, and she shared her hopes and fears. They laughed together, debated politics and philosophy, and discovered that they were remarkably compatible in almost every way. But they also stole moments of privacy when they could, sneaking away to kiss in the barn or hold hands while walking to the far pastures. The attraction between them had not diminished with time. If anything, it had grown stronger. But they both knew they wanted to do things right, to build a foundation of respect and commitment before taking the physical relationship further. I want to marry you soon, Travis said one evening, about 6 weeks after their arrival. They were sitting by the creek that ran through the ranch property, watching the water flow past in the fading light. I know we are supposed to court for months, but I do not want to wait that long. Neither do I, Willa admitted. I already know you are the person I want to spend my life with. I knew it on the trail. The courting is just for everyone else's benefit. So, if I asked Jacob for permission to marry you now, you would say yes? In a heartbeat. Travis kissed her then, deep and passionate, and when they broke apart, he was smiling. Then I'm going to talk to your brother tomorrow. If he agrees, I'm going to ask you to marry me properly, and we can start planning a wedding. Willa felt excitement bubble up in her chest. I cannot wait. True to his word, Travis spoke to Jacob the next day. Willa was not present for the conversation, but Travis told her later that Jacob had been supportive, though he had asked Travis some pointed questions about his ability to support a wife. Travis had been honest. He had some money saved from his work on the ranch, plus the payment for the horses, and he was willing to work as hard as necessary to build a life for them. I told him I would build us a small house on the edge of the property if he was willing to give me a plot of land, Travis said. Nothing fancy, just a cabin to start. But it would be ours, Willa. A place to begin our life together. What did he say? He said yes. He's giving us 5 acres and helping with the materials for the house. We can start building next week. That evening, Travis asked Willa to marry him officially. He got down on one knee in front of the whole household at dinner, holding out a simple gold band he had bought in town. Willa Preston, you are the bravest, kindest, most amazing woman I have ever met, Travis said, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. You saved me just as much as I saved you, and I cannot imagine spending my life with anyone else. Will you marry me? Yes, Willa said, tears streaming down her face. Yes, absolutely yes. Everyone cheered as Travis slipped the ring onto her finger and stood to kiss her. Jacob was grinning, Maria was crying happy tears, and the ranch hands were whistling and clapping. It was perfect and joyful, and Willa felt like her heart might burst from happiness. They set the wedding date for late September, giving them time to build their cabin and make arrangements. Willa threw herself into preparation, sewing a wedding dress with Maria's help and planning the details of the ceremony. Travis worked on the cabin every spare moment, and slowly the structure began to take shape, a solid little building, with 2 rooms, a stone fireplace, and windows that looked out over the ranch. "It is perfect," Willa said when Travis showed her the nearly finished cabin. "I love it." "It is just the start," Travis said, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "We will add on as we need to, make it bigger and better. But for now, it is ours." The wedding day arrived on a beautiful autumn afternoon, the air crisp and clean, the leaves on the cottonwood trees turning gold. They held the ceremony outside, in front of the main house, with a traveling preacher officiating. Willa wore her mother's locket with her new dress, feeling her parents' presence even in their absence. Travis wore a new suit, his hair neatly combed, looking more handsome than she had ever seen him. Jacob walked her down the makeshift aisle, and when he placed her hand in Travis's, he whispered, "Be happy, little sister. You deserve this." The ceremony was simple but heartfelt. They exchanged vows, promising to love and honor each other for the rest of their lives. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Travis kissed her with such tenderness that Willa felt tears slide down her cheeks. The celebration afterward was joyful and loud, with music and dancing and more food than they could possibly eat. The ranch hands danced with Maria and the other women from nearby ranches who had been invited. Jacob gave a toast that made everyone laugh and cry. And through it all, Willa and Travis could not stop looking at each other, marveling that they had found this happiness against all odds. As evening fell, they slipped away to their new cabin, their new home. Travis carried her over the threshold, both of them laughing, and set her down gently in the middle of the room. The interior was simple but clean, furnished with a bed, a table, 2 chairs, and little else. But it was theirs, and that made it perfect. "Hello, wife," Travis said, pulling her close. "Hello, husband," Willa replied, and kissed him. That night, they consummated their marriage, coming together with love and tenderness and a passion that had been building for months. It was everything Willa had hoped for, and more, a physical expression of the emotional bond they had forged. Afterward, they lay tangled together in their bed, Travis's arms around her, both of them glowing with happiness. "I love you," Travis whispered against her hair. "I will never stop loving you." "I love you too," Willa said, her hand over his heart. "Thank you for saving me, for giving me this life." "Thank you for letting me stay," Travis replied, "for giving me a reason to stop wandering." They fell asleep wrapped around each other, 2 people who had found each other against impossible odds, 2 souls who had recognized their match and refused to let go. The years that followed were filled with hard work and deep joy. Travis proved to be an excellent ranch hand, and an even better husband. He was patient and kind, quick to laugh and slow to anger. And he loved Willa with a devotion that never wavered. Together, they built a life expanding their cabin, adding furniture and personal touches, creating a home that reflected both of them. Willa helped Maria with the cooking and the household management, but she also carved out time for herself. She started a small lending library for the ranch hands and their families, sharing her precious books with anyone who wanted to read. She planted a garden near their cabin, growing vegetables and flowers, and she wrote letters to old friends in San Francisco, telling them about her new life and how happy she was. In the spring of 1883, a year and a half after their wedding, Willa discovered she was pregnant. She told Travis one evening after dinner, watching his face carefully for his reaction. "Are you sure?" he asked, his voice filled with wonder. "As sure as I can be. Maria says all the signs are there." Willa took his hand and placed it on her still flat stomach. "We are going to have a baby, Travis." He kissed her then, deep and passionate, and when he pulled back, she saw tears in his eyes. "I cannot believe it. A baby. Our baby." They told Jacob the next day, and he was thrilled, already talking about being an uncle and teaching the child to ride. The whole ranch seemed to celebrate with them, and Willa felt surrounded by love and support. The pregnancy was not easy. Willa was often sick in the early months, and as she grew larger, she found it harder to do the physical work she was used to. But Travis was wonderful, taking on extra tasks without complaint, rubbing her sore feet in the evenings, and reassuring her when she felt anxious about the upcoming birth. Their son was born in November of 1883, during a cold snap that left frost on the windows. The birth was long and difficult, but Maria was there to help, along with a doctor from town. When Willa finally heard her baby's cry, the pain faded into insignificance. "You have a son," Maria said, placing the tiny, squirming bundle in Willa's arms. a beautiful, healthy boy. Travis was allowed in shortly after, and the look on his face when he saw his son was something Willa would never forget. He knelt beside the bed, one finger gently stroking the baby's cheek, tears streaming down his face. "He is perfect," Travis whispered. "You are perfect. I do not know what I did to deserve this, but I am grateful every day." They named him Thomas, after Travis's grandfather, and he was indeed perfect, a good-natured baby with dark hair and his father's gray eyes. Travis was a devoted father, getting up for late-night feedings, changing diapers without complaint, and spending hours just holding his son and marveling at him. Jacob doted on his nephew, declaring him the smartest, most handsome baby in all of Utah Territory. The ranch hands took turns holding him and making ridiculous faces to get him to smile, and Willa found motherhood to be both harder and more rewarding than she had imagined. Over the next few years, their family grew. A daughter, Anna, was born in 1885, sweet-natured and curious. Another son, James, arrived in 1887, boisterous and energetic. Their cabin grew as well, with Travis adding rooms to accommodate their expanding family. Through it all, the love between Willa and Travis never diminished. If anything, it deepened with time, becoming something solid and enduring. They had their challenges, money was sometimes tight, children got sick, work was hard. But they faced everything together, drawing strength from their partnership. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Travis gave Willa a leather-bound journal. "For your writing," he said, "you are always telling stories to the children. I thought you might want to write them down." Willa was touched by the thoughtfulness of the gift. That night, after the children were asleep, she opened the journal and began to write. She wrote about the day her ox died, about the cowboy who stopped to help, about falling in love on the trail. She wrote about their journey, their struggles, and their triumphs. She wrote about building a life from nothing but hope and hard work. Years later, when their children were grown, they would read those journals and marvel at their parents' story. They would tell it to their own children, and it would become part of the family history, the tale of how their grandmother was stranded when her ox died, and how a cowboy gave her his team and walked beside her, and how that simple act of kindness had blossomed into a love that lasted a lifetime. By the time Willa and Travis reached their golden years, their family had grown to include not just their children, but grandchildren as well. Thomas had taken over much of the ranch operations from Jacob, who had retired to a comfortable cottage on the property. Anna had married a doctor and lived in Salt Lake City, but visited frequently with her children. James worked alongside his father, learning the horse trade that Travis had excelled at for decades. On warm summer evenings, Willa and Travis would sit on the porch of their expanded cabin, now a proper house with multiple bedrooms and modern conveniences, and watch the sun set over the land they had worked for so many years. Travis's hair had gone silver, and Willa's face bore the lines of a life well lived. But when they looked at each other, they still saw the young people who had fallen in love on a dusty trail in Nevada. "Do you ever regret it?" Willa asked one evening, her hand in his. "Giving up your horses, walking all that way?" Travis turned to her, and the love in his eyes was as strong as it had been that first night they confessed their feelings in the storm. "Not for a single moment. Those horses bought me a life I never could have imagined. They bought me you." "I would have died without you," Willa said softly. "I know that. I would have tried to walk to Verde and collapse somewhere in the desert, but you did not, and I did not walk away from you the way I walked away from that other woman. We both made different choices, and those choices led us here." He squeezed her hand. "To this life, this family, this love. I would make those choices again every single day." Willa leaned her head on his shoulder, watching their grandchildren play in the yard, their laughter carrying on the evening breeze. Their story had become legendary in the family, the tale of a stranded woman and a selfless cowboy, of a journey that became a courtship, of a love that had built an empire of family and happiness. "Tell us the story again, Grandma," little Sarah, Thomas's daughter, called out, running up to the porch with grass stains on her dress. "Tell us about how you and Grandpa met." Willa smiled and patted the porch step, inviting the children to gather. They came running, Sarah, Michael, Elizabeth, Jacob Jr., and the others, ranging in age from 5 to 15. Travis's arm came around Willa's shoulders as she began the tale they had heard countless times, but never tired of. "It was the summer of 1882, Willa began, her voice still strong despite her years. "And I was alone on a trail in Nevada, heading to your great-uncle Jacob's ranch. My ox had just died, and I thought that might be the end of everything. But then I heard hoofbeats." The children listened raptly, asking questions at all the right moments, gasping at the dramatic parts even though they knew them by heart. And when Willa reached the end, the wedding, the cabin, the building of their life together, they sighed with satisfaction. "That is the best story," Elizabeth declared. "Better than any book." "It is better than any book because it is true," Travis said, his voice warm with affection. "Every word of it." As the children ran back to their play, Willa turned to Travis. "We did well, did we not? With our life?" "We did better than well," Travis replied. "We did extraordinary. We took a chance encounter on a dusty trail and turned it into something beautiful. We built a family, a home, a legacy. We loved each other through good times and hard times, and we never gave up on each other." "Never," Willa agreed. "Not once." They sat in comfortable silence as the stars began to emerge, the same stars that had shone down on them that first night in the storm, the night they had confessed their love. So much had changed since then, but the essential truth remained the same. They had found each other against all odds, and they had chosen each other every day since. Jacob came out to join them, moving more slowly than he once had, but still strong for his age. "Beautiful evening," he said, settling into a rocking chair. "Perfect weather." "I was just thinking about the day Willa arrived," Travis said. "How nervous I was to meet you, how sure I was that you would send me packing." Jacob laughed. "I could see how you looked at each other. I would have had to be blind to miss it. And stubborn as I am not fool enough to stand in the way of true love." "You gave us your blessing when we needed it most," Willa said. "I will never forget that, Jacob. You could have been difficult, could have demanded we wait years to marry, but you trusted us." "I trusted what I saw," Jacob said simply. "Two people who loved each other and were not afraid to work for what they wanted. That is all anyone needs to build a good marriage." As the evening deepened into night, Maria called everyone in for dinner, a huge, chaotic affair with 3 generations gathered around an expanded table. There was laughter and teasing, stories and jokes, the comfortable chaos of a large, loving family. Willa looked around the table at all the faces, her children, her grandchildren, her brother, the friends who had become family over the years, and felt overwhelming gratitude. After dinner, when the children had been put to bed and the house had quieted, Willa and Travis walked out to look at the cabin where they had first lived as newlyweds. It still stood, though it was now used for storage, and seeing it always brought back a flood of memories. "Remember our wedding night?" Travis asked, pulling her close. "How could I forget? You were so nervous you nearly dropped me when you tried to carry me over the threshold." Willa laughed at the memory. "I was terrified I would mess everything up," Travis admitted. "But you were patient with me. You have always been patient with me." "And you have always been kind to me," Willa replied. "From that very first day when you gave me your horses and asked for nothing in return. That kindness has never wavered, Travis. Not in 35 years. 35 years, Travis repeated, wonder in his voice. "Where did the time go?" "Into this," Willa said, gesturing at the ranch, the house, the life they had built. "Into every day we chose each other, every challenge we faced together, every joy we shared. The time went into building something that will outlast us both." They stood there for a long time, holding each other under the stars, 2 people who had taken a chance on love and won everything because of it. The night was perfect and still, filled with the sounds of the ranch settling down for the evening horses nickering in the corrals, the distant call of an owl, the soft rustle of wind through the grass. "I love you," Travis said, the words as fresh and meaningful as they had been the first time he spoke them. "I will love you until my last breath, and beyond if such things are possible." "I love you too," Willa replied, her voice thick with emotion. "You are my everything, Travis Malloy. You always have been." They walked back to the house hand in hand, 2 people who had found their forever in the most unlikely of circumstances. Behind them, the little cabin stood as a testament to their beginning, and around them, the ranch thrived as evidence of what they had built together. In the years that followed, Willa would often return to that journal Travis had given her, adding to the story of their life. She wrote about their children's triumphs and challenges, about the growth of the ranch, about the quiet moments of joy that made up a life well lived. And always, she returned to that beginning, to the day her ox died, and a stranger stopped to help. "He gave me his horses," she wrote in one entry, her handwriting still strong despite her advancing age. "But more than that, he gave me hope when I had none. He gave me companionship when I was alone. He gave me love when I had forgotten what it felt like. And in return, I gave him everything I had, my heart, my trust, my life. It was the best trade I ever made." When Willa passed away peacefully in her sleep at the age of 78, surrounded by her family, Travis held her hand and whispered his love one final time. He lived for 3 more years, long enough to see Thomas's son take over the ranch operations, long enough to hold his first great-great-grandchild, long enough to know that what he and Willa had built would continue long after they were gone. On the day of Travis's funeral, as the family gathered to say goodbye, young Sarah, now a grown woman with children of her own, stood up to speak. She held the leather journal that had been passed down to her, the one filled with her grandmother's careful handwriting. "My grandparents taught me that love is not just a feeling," Sarah said, her voice carrying across the assembled family. "It is a choice you make every day. It is sacrifice and compromise and hard work. But when you find the right person, when you choose each other through everything, you build something that lasts forever." She opened the journal to a marked page and read, "He gave me his team and walked beside me, and in doing so, he gave me everything. This is the story I want my children and grandchildren to know, that love, real love, is found in the small acts of kindness, in the willingness to sacrifice for another, in the choice to keep walking forward together, no matter how hard the path becomes." As Sarah's words echoed across the gathering, the family bowed their heads in remembrance of 2 extraordinary people who had taken a chance meeting on a desert trail and transformed it into a legacy of love that would endure for generations. The ranch continued to thrive, passed down through the family, each generation adding their own chapter to the story. And on warm summer evenings, you could still find family members gathered on the porch, telling the tale of Willa and Travis, of how she was stranded when her ox died pulling the wagon, how a cowboy gave her his team and walked beside her, and how that single act of kindness had blossomed into a love story for the ages. Their graves lay side by side on a hill overlooking the ranch, 2 simple headstones that bore their names and a single inscription chosen by their children, 2 souls who found each other on a dusty trail and chose love every day after. And if you listen carefully on those summer evenings, when the wind whispered through the grass and the stars shone bright overhead, you could almost hear their voices laughing together, telling stories, expressing the love that had sustained them through 38 years of marriage and into whatever lay beyond. Their story became more than just family history. It became a reminder that sometimes the worst moments of our lives can lead to the best things, that kindness towards strangers can change everything, and that true love is built not in grand gestures, but in the daily choice to walk beside someone, no matter how difficult the journey becomes. The little cabin where they began still stands on the property, preserved now as a memorial to their beginning. Visitors come sometimes, drawn by the family story that has spread beyond the ranch, and they stand in that simple space and imagine 2 young people starting their life together with nothing but love and hope and determination. And the horse is the descendants of those 2 animals that Travis gave to Willa that hot July day in 1882, still work the ranch, strong and steady, a living reminder of the sacrifice that started it all. The family breeds them carefully, proud of the lineage, proud of the story those horses represent. On the 100th anniversary of Willa and Travis's wedding, the family gathered for a celebration. Over 200 people came, children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, great-great-grandchildren, and beyond. They stood on the land that Willa and Travis had worked in front of the house they had built, and they honored the legacy of love that had made all of their lives possible. Sarah, now elderly herself, stood before the crowd with tears streaming down her face. "They would be so proud," she said, her voice shaking with emotion. "Proud of this family, proud of what we have built together, proud that their love story still matters after all these years." And it did matter. It mattered to every person who heard it, to every couple who took inspiration from it, to every individual who learned that love, real, lasting love, is possible if you are willing to make the sacrifices necessary to build it. The sun set that evening on 5 generations of family gathered together, all of them connected by the choice two people made in the summer of 1882 to give everything they had for a stranger, to walk beside each other through uncertainty and hardship, and to choose love every single day. Their story was complete, their ending perfect. Two lives well lived, a love that lasted a lifetime, and a legacy that would endure forever. Willa Preston and Travis Malloy had taken a chance meeting on a dusty Nevada trail and turned it into something extraordinary, proving that sometimes the greatest love stories begin with a simple act of kindness and the choice to walk together into an unknown future. And so, their story ends where it began, on a trail in the American West, with two people making a choice that would change everything. She was stranded when her ox died pulling the wagon. A cowboy gave her his team and walked beside her. And from that moment forward, their lives were forever intertwined, their love forever remembered, their legacy forever celebrated by all who came after them.